Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the World Martial Arts Radio Network. Up next, you will be listening to the USA Martial Arts Hall of Fame Show Host of the Year Award winner, the one and only Justin Harvey, producer, director, and on-air star of The Justin Harvey Show.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Ma from World Martial Arts Media, and today I'm here to tell you about LegacyBelts.com. Legacy Championship Belts and Awards is the world's premier manufacturer of custom and cast championship title belts who supplies belts to the top professional boxing, MMA, and wrestling organizations on the planet. If you're a promoter or collector looking for a high-quality MMA, martial arts, boxing, wrestling belt, or even a belt for a special event, then you need to visit LegacyBelts.com today. Be sure to like us at www.facebook.com/LegacyBelts.
Hello, this is Bohdi Sanders, and you are listening to The Justin Harvey Show.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Justin Harvey here of The Justin Harvey Show in conjunction with World Martial Arts Radio Network and Media, which today's broadcast is brought to you by Legacy Belts. If you need a belt for wrestling, MMA, or even a film, go to LegacyBelts.com. Today I have with me on the phone one of the best-selling authors, martial artist, Mr. Bohdi Sanders. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Justin. Good to be here.
I'm glad to have you. It's totally an honor. I've been following your Facebook posts, and I've heard a lot of good things about you, sir.
Well, that's good to hear. It's always better than hearing that you've heard a lot of bad things about me.
Well, I've always heard any publicity can be good publicity. It just depends on how you look at it, actually. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I've heard that too, but I don't know if I agree with that one.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit of your background to get started, like where you're from and that kind of thing.
Well, I'm from Colorado, I've moved around. I started martial arts in Louisiana like about over 31 years ago now. Wow, it doesn't seem like that long ago. I grew up street fighting, and we didn't have any kind of dojo or martial arts studio anywhere around where I grew up. I grew up in rural Mississippi, and there was no dojos anywhere around. But after I got interested in martial arts, I ended up moving to Louisiana for a while and met Bob and Nikki Allen, and that's where I started my martial arts, and everything has snowballed from there.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So, what is your preferred style of martial arts?
I've studied several different styles. My main martial arts is Shotokan karate. I've been in Shotokan, for over 31 years now. But I've studied some other stuff on the side, and just kind of integrate what works for me into my martial arts. I don't do straight Shotokan anymore, as I have, don't go to the tournaments anymore. I'm not teaching right now, and so I just take what's useful, from whatever martial arts I may, work in, and kind of combine that for what, whatever works for me.
Oh wow! So, did you used to compete back in the day?
Yeah, I haven't competed in tournaments since 1990. I guess was the last time. And I had, students I was taking around to the tournaments. My sons, I taught both of my sons, and they were starting to get to the point that they weren't really interested in the self-defense side. They were more interested in how do I win this tournament? How do I win this trophy? Teach me, this technique or that technique to, score points. And when it got to that point, I quit taking them to the tournaments and just quit doing the tournament scene altogether.
Wow. My next question for you, sir, is your books are on Amazon and on the best sellers list. Could you tell us why you wrote your first book?
Well, my first book didn't even start off as a book. It was started as a journal for my sons. I got a couple of these big journals from Barnes & Noble, and over the years, I started writing different wisdom down, different, philosophies that I hold to for my boys as a graduation present for their high school graduation. And, I worked on those for 6 or 7 years. And every time I would go back to it and, kind of read what I had written before, I said, this is good stuff. This is something I would actually buy in Barnes & Noble. And it kind of, went from there. And one day I decided, well, I think what I'll do is format this stuff and see, send it out to a couple of publishers. I sent it out to 4 publishing companies and got 2 offers back. And, everything has snowballed from there.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's amazing. Can you tell us about your recent book? And I know that some of the public have they say that it's politically incorrect. Can you comment on that as well?
My recent book is not a martial arts book. It's a book for men. And, I've been seeing, a lot of issues directed towards men in the media, in Hollywood, across the board, especially in our country. And, I thought, this is not right. We're seeing men portrayed as weak, as unintelligent, and their wife is portrayed as the person that's in charge, and the one, the guy's a big kid, and she has another kid for her to take care of. And so I decided to write my new book, which is called Men of the Code, and it's a book for for men to get back to where they used to be, men of honor and character and integrity, and it kind of walks people through the different traits of a man of the code. It talks about what the problems are, the difference between the average guy and a guy that really takes integrity and honor seriously. And I guess a lot of that stuff is politically incorrect in today's world, but I've never been accused of being politically correct to start with, so that doesn't bother me. I'm just with all my books, I just write what I believe and what I try to live, and the people who like it, and those who don't, can read something else. But the new book has gotten a very warm reception so far. It is it's ranked 5 stars on Amazon, and within the first less than 48 hours after it came out, it was ranked number 1, bestseller on the philosophy category on Amazon.
That's amazing. Now, are some of your books, sir, on audiobook format? Because I know that that's the best format that I like to use. I was just wondering if they're in audiobook format.
Right now, I don't have any books on audio. I've had several people ask me for it. I'm just, right now, I'm too busy to take the time to do that. I've got a lot of other projects going on, and I just haven't slowed down enough to actually do the recording and put those out on audiobooks.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. I was just, one of my personal questions, because that's just one of my personal preferences. But then there's some people that say that they love the feel of a book and even the smell of a book. So, that's me. I can't listen to audiobooks. That's probably another reason that I've never taken the time to do it. When I read something, if it's a good book, it's going to be highlighted all the way through, different, stuff here and there. And that way, you can go back and just flip through, skim through, and hit the parts that really were meaningful for you. And that's the way I read anything I read. So, audio books and even reading on electronic books or e-books is just something I've never gotten into. Oh, wow. Well, and I would also like to know, sir, I understand that you had a street fighting background. What attracted you from that to traditional martial arts, sir? Well,
I grew up street fighting, and that's kind of, in rural Mississippi, there's not a lot to do, and there was a lot of fights, and most guys, well, I don't know about most, but a lot of the guys who I grew up with, grew up that way. And like I said, there was no organized martial arts anywhere around where I lived. And I'd always been interested in that, but I didn't know anything about it whatsoever. And after I moved to Louisiana, I decided one day to, I went by and there was a Shotokan sign on the main street. Stopped in and kind of had a connection with the guy and his wife there, and ended up, I had a paint company down there in Monroe, Louisiana. Mm-hmm. I ended up trading, a paint job on their house for unlimited Shotokan lessons, and that's the way my martial arts career started.
Wow, that's amazing, sir. How do you feel personally that it's really benefited you? How has, doing traditional martial arts benefited you the most, do you think?
Well, it's basically changed my life. When I got into martial arts, I didn't just get into the fighting side because I had been a fighter for a long time. But it also got me interested in the philosophical side and the spiritual side of the arts, which has evolved into, what I write about in my books now. And, so I wouldn't have any books out if I had never gotten, into martial arts to start with. It has completely changed, my interest in life and how I live and what I do.
Oh, wow, that's amazing, sir. And I understand that you're a father, sir, and what do you feel are the most important reasons for women and children to learn martial arts?
For anybody in martial arts, as far as I'm concerned, the number one reason should be self-defense. I know a lot of people take martial arts for exercise or for fun or for the sport side of it. But, to me, if a martial art is not based on self-defense first, then it's no different than going out and playing soccer or tennis or any other sport because you're just doing it for enjoyment or, the competition. But for me, the most important thing that everyone needs to know is how to defend themselves, especially in today's world. And, everyone has their own reasons, for learning martial arts. For me, self-defense is the bottom line. And that's all I train for anymore is self-defense. And, I think when it comes down to it, if you don't get the self-defense part out of it, then you're not getting what martial arts was meant to be.
Yes, and that's why I kind of have trouble with MMA. I mean, don't get me wrong. I respect MMA, but I'm more of a traditionalist when it comes to martial arts. So.
Yeah, me too. I'm not a big MMA fan at all. Actually, I'm not an MMA fan at all. I don't watch it. Most of the people that I've run across that are into MMA are, all they care about is fighting. They don't care about, their character, the integrity, the honor part. They don't care about the philosophy, their spiritual part. And, to be blunt, most of the people I've ever met in MMA have been thugs, and that's not my thing.
Yeah. I've had a few people, that's in the MMA circuit, personally attack me and just be so unprofessional. So I can really relate to that. But then there are certain two that have been really, really nice. But then it's
you're going to have good people and bad people in any area in life, whether it's martial arts or MMA or teaching school or lawyers, whatever. You're going to have good people and bad people. That's the way the world works.
Yeah.
And I found that it seems like to me the majority of the people that are into MMA are not. I wouldn't classify them as people of good character. I'll just leave it at that.
Sounds good, sir. And what is your personal philosophy for the martial arts? What is your personal philosophy?
My personal philosophy is use what works. I'm not, as I said, I'm no longer hung up on doing things like everyone else, or just using specific techniques from my style, or making sure I only use the techniques as they're shown. That's not what real fighting, real self-defense is about anyway. If you go out in the street and you get jumped by a couple of gangbangers, just trying to do the perfect techniques and stuff is going to get you hurt. That's unrealistic. Realistic martial arts uses whatever you need to use to come out of any kind of confrontation like that victoriously, without getting injured, without getting hurt. And to me, I'm just as likely to use a baseball bat or a brick bat as I am a front kick or reverse punch in a fight.
Yeah.
And that's just, that's what I think about it. Martial arts has kind of lost its way to a point in today's society, as far as I'm concerned. The tournaments are more like gymnastics competitions and just big stage shows. It's if you go out and see somebody using a bow staff, it's more like a baton twirler than what was taught in traditional martial arts. That's just not for me. I'm not into that. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I mean, one sport is as valid as another sport, but to me, martial arts were never meant to be a sport. They're about self-defense. That's what it boils down to. And just like so many other things in today's world, martial arts has kind of gotten bigger and crazier, and they've lost what the basis where it started. And it's kind of gotten watered down and mixed up, and now there you see 10-year-old boys out there with black belts on. That was never meant to be. And so my philosophy is you use what works for you. And the same thing is not going to work for every person. Some people are good at jump kicks or flying kicks. Other people don't kick above the waist. As far as I'm concerned, you use whatever works for your body type. There's different body types, different types of muscle fibers. Not everybody is going to be able to throw a side snap kick to somebody's face, but everybody can kick somebody in the knee. So
wow. And I understand, sir, you have a highly popular Facebook group on Facebook. Can you tell the fans of the show and your fans the name of the group and how you got that started and what it's about?
Yeah, I actually have several Facebook pages. My two most popular is, one is called Warrior Wisdom and the Warrior Lifestyle. I've got around, 71,000 people on that, I guess. I also have another popular page called The Gentleman Warrior, and it just went over 30,000 readers. And
wow.
Both those pages, I talk about the warrior lifestyle. I talk about character, integrity, honor. We also get into martial arts and different things about self-defense. So we cover a lot of different topics on those. And my pages and my posts have gotten extremely popular on Facebook. And a lot of people find me on Facebook and then end up going from there to finding out about my books, and they end up loving the books. And it's just, Facebook is a good way to connect and meet a lot of good people. There are a lot of, drawbacks to Facebook too. You got a lot of crazy guys on there, but you have to take the good with the bad.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right. You hit it on the head right there. And I understand that many instructors use your books in their classes to teach. Which book do you think would be the best for an instructor to use, and why?
Well, all of my books are good for martial arts. It's because a true martial arts is not just about fighting. It's about having, about living life, and about it's a lifestyle. And so it covers much more than fighting. It covers, your integrity, your honor, your character. It covers, self-defense against more than just a physical attack, but, self-defense against, like, online stalking, that type of stuff, or self-defense, say, with your office workers who might be trying to, somehow, cost you your job. And it also encompasses the spiritual side. As far as which of my books to use, a lot of people use the Warrior Wisdom series, which is a series of 3 books, Warrior Wisdom, Warrior, and the Warrior Lifestyle. And all of those books have hit the top 10 on Amazon at one time or another. And, my book, Modern Bushido, is my most popular book so far. It's hit number 1 on Amazon and stayed in the top 10 for 104 weeks. And those are all great books to use in class because, I write them in a very short, straight-to-the-point way. So they're easy to use for, say, if you want to, take a break in class and sit everybody down and talk about philosophy for 5 or 10 minutes, then those books are perfect for that because you can get, a short lesson in, straight to the point. And I think, a lot of people are enjoying using those. My books have also been used in juvenile detention centers to help troubled teens. And they're also used by many parents to help their teens that may be, on the edge or, kind of going towards the wrong crowd. And some public schools have even contacted me about using, my books for talking points or to teach character training in the school. And I think, one reason they're so popular is I purposely wrote my books in a short and easy to understand way with, short lessons and examples that most anyone can relate to. So, and that's one thing I get a lot of comments, a lot of feedback from people that they say, well, I thought this was a martial arts book, but this book is great for anyone, not just martial artists. And that's true, because the lessons, most of my books are on philosophy and character, but it integrates self-defense and martial arts and the whole 9 yards all into one. And so all of that stuff is not just for martial artists. That's for anyone who wants to live, life to the fullest and live with honor and character and integrity. It's for anyone who wants to watch their back and stay safe, not just on the street, but like I was saying before, in everyday life. There's people today. You're much more likely to be attacked by somebody who is spreading rumors or slandering you or libeling you across the internet than you are about somebody jumping out of an alley to attack you. And you've got to know how to defend yourself against all of those. My book, Defensive Living, is all about that. It's defensive living, the other side of self-defense. And it's because there's so much more to self-defense than just knowing how to defend yourself physically. There's a lot of different ways that people can attack you and try to hurt you in today's world, especially with our technology that we have today. And so you need to know how to defend yourself across the board, just like you need to know how to make your home safe, and maybe know about security system, know what to look for, know what the criminals look for, know kind of what to expect from different people, and that's what defensive living is all about. And that book is probably my favorite of all of mine. But my books are basically a guide for people who want to live their life at a higher level. They want to live what I call the warrior lifestyle, which encompasses everything we've been talking about. It's a lifestyle based on honor, character, and integrity, self-reliance, and it's kind of a balanced lifestyle that balances the spiritual, the mental, and the physical sides of life and wraps them all up into one complete package, which is what successful people do all the time. And so I'm just trying to walk people through that, because it's so many people today, so many kids are not being taught any of this stuff. I mean, they have no clue. I was a school teacher for 15 years, and the kids they don't even understand courtesy and manners anymore. They don't understand the stuff that I teach in these books, and I get so many emails thanking me for these books because it's teaching something that it seems like our society has forgotten for the most part, and even those who haven't forgotten it are not passing it on to their children, and so these kids are not getting it anywhere else.
Wow, and since you brought up that that you were a teacher and stuff, here's an interesting question. How do you feel about technology being more in school? Like, for example, they're starting to use iPads more. They're starting to use Skype in the classroom, and and it seems like they're trying to be in the technology era these days.
Yeah, there's good sides and bad sides to it. I spent 6 years teaching for an online school, and we totally use technology across the board. And the students went into an Illuminate room for classes, and the teacher taught them online. They could ask questions or whatever, and all their lessons and everything was online. But if you get into the traditional school setting and you get too much technology, it takes away from the actual education, because there's so many ways kids can goof around with the technology instead of paying attention. And when you get a class of 30 kids, each one of them on their own computer, there's no way to make sure they're staying on task. So it's a mixed bag. There's some things you can learn anything you want today right from the internet, and but on the flip side of that, there's just as much garbage on the internet and bad stuff as there is good stuff, and so you have to discipline yourself to only do what's going to be helpful for you. And a lot of kids don't have that discipline, and it's a mixed bag.
Exactly, and a perfect example, sir, is I was told that I would never do a radio show, and I applied myself and started my own radio show online, and and it's done quite well. So I can understand what you're saying. You just got to discipline yourself to apply yourself when you're using the internet.
Right.
So I can completely relate to that. If you could go back in time and start your journey over in the martial arts, what would you do differently?
If I was able to go back and start again, I would have tried to start earlier. I don't know, exactly how I would have done that, since there was no martial arts dojo anywhere around where I grew up. But one thing I would have definitely done differently was be more serious right from the start. When I started martial arts, I was probably 20 years old. And I was still partying a lot and doing other stuff, and so I wasn't really dedicated to the martial arts, because I really didn't know what it was. It took me a couple of years at least to really understand what the martial arts were all about. And if I was able to do it over again, I would have been serious right from the start. I would have trained daily, because back then I went to class, like Monday and Thursday night or something, and the rest of the week, I partied or did whatever else. But I would have stayed with my original instructors at least until I earned my first black belt, through the same instructors. I would have tried to go to Japan and do some training there. I would have applied myself much more at an earlier age, and I think that's important. The earlier you start something, if you stick with it and you're serious with it, then the better you're going to be. It just gets ingrained into your muscles, into your mind. But hindsight's always 20/20, and that's another reason that I've written the martial arts books that I've written, is because people need to know this. If people have this information, earlier, they can not make the same mistakes that I made, that other people made. They can learn from our mistakes instead of having to make all the same mistakes, for themselves. You know, in the United States especially, you know, we teach our kids to focus more on fun and, you know, just basically more fun than anything else. And as so, our kids are not as focused as they should be, and they're not really focused on preparing for life. They're not looking into the future. It's everything is right now, living today. And you know, when you have that attitude, then something like the martial arts, where you have to really work hard, you know, for it, and you have to consistently work hard, it looks like to a lot of kids, well, you know, it's not worth it. You know, it's too much work. You know, I'd rather be out partying. I'd rather be doing this. And you know, so I'm kind of hoping that my books, you know, help people to see this and to realize this and not make the same mistakes I did.
That's a very excellent point, sir, and I'm glad to have you on today. Could you tell our listeners how they can reach you and possibly subscribe to your newsletter so that they can learn even more information about you, sir?
Yeah, they can reach me on my website, thewisdomwarrior.com, or on any of my Facebook pages. You know, my email is warriorwisdom@comcast.net. My website also has some great deals on book packages. I have a free newsletter that comes out once or twice a year, and there's hundreds of free articles on my website. Lots of good stuff on there. My books are also available on Amazon, and you can also have your local bookstore order them in for you as well. And you know, so there's a lot of different ways to get in touch with me. And you know, my Facebook pages, you know, I'm on there almost daily, and it's pretty easy to get in touch with me on there. And there's a ton of great writing and articles and all kind of information on my Facebook pages as well.
Well, thank you, sir. And, you know, on behalf of the Justin Harvey Show and on behalf of World Martial Arts Radio Network, I want to thank you for being on the show. And if you'd like, can you please share some final thoughts with us today?
Well, you know, my final thoughts as far as, you know, for your martial arts listeners would be to stay the course. You know, it's, you know, nothing worthwhile comes easy or too fast. You have to work for it. You have to spend the time, put in the work. And I would say, you know, if you're really serious about martial arts, you need to practice it daily, not just when you go to class, but every day. You're either working on, you know, the philosophy side, the spiritual side, the physical side. You need to be stretching every day. You need to be, you know, going through your katas, your techniques, and you know, don't get so focused on the techniques of your style that it starts to hinder you. You know, when I first started sparring, you know, I came into martial arts as a good fighter, and then when I started Shotokan, we would have sparring in the class, and I got where, even though there were guys in there, you know, that I had actually been in a fight with in the street, that you know, we came from different places and ended up in the same class, and I'd actually, you know, beat the crap out of them in the street before, and they would beat me sparring. And the whole reason for that is, you know, I was trying to do their technique and fight their way instead of just relaxing, going into Mushin and just letting myself be natural and fight naturally. And, you know, so that's something you've got to do, especially when you're thinking about choosing a martial art. You need to think about the style and how it compares to your body type, your abilities, and you know, if you have experience fighting, you've got to think about how it relates to, you know, what you can already do.
Absolutely, sir, and it's been an honor to have you on the show. It really has. So I want to thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Justin.
Hi, Stephanie Ma here again with a special report from World Martial Arts Media about LegacyFightGear.com. Legacy Fight Gear is the official supplier to the world's oldest and most respected martial arts organizations. They have been manufacturing high-quality, affordable products for over 30 years. Visit their new online catalog at legacyfightgear.com today. School owners who want to raise money for their teams can register to get a wholesale account and become a distributor for legacyfightgear.com. Don't forget to like our official page at www.facebook.com/legacyfightgear.
You have been listening to The Justin Harvey Show here on the World Martial Arts Radio Network. Be sure to tune in again next week for his latest show. Thank you for listening.